Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome and happy Friday. Welcome to Masterclass Friday. My name is Terry White, worldwide designer, photography evangelist here at Adobe. It's my pleasure to be streaming to you once again on a Friday morning, my time here in Atlanta. So today, for those of you who are unaware of what Friday Masterclasses are, the evangelism team here at Adobe, including myself, Paul Tranny, Jason Levine, who's on sabbatical, um, Howard Pinsky, and Kyle Webster, we all stream on Fridays, except when we're on sabbatical or the company is taking a day off, to do a deep dive in our various disciplines. So I do a photography masterclass every Friday, and it's my pleasure to be doing one once again. So I think Paul kicked one off right before me on Photoshop. After me will be the design Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge. Then Paul will be back doing graphic design. And then I think there's an Illustrator Creative Challenge. Jason, like I said, is off on sabbatical. And we have Howard and doing XD and UX UI design, as well as Kyle Webster finishing off the day doing digital painting and drawing. So with that said, it's kind of a fun day for those that just want to hang out and learn cool new things and see new things and do new things and hopefully get some takeaways for your own life. Now, this topic that I picked today is one that if I had to say that there were, 5 questions I get about Lightroom all the time, this would definitely be in the top 5. And it's really because we have 2 versions of Lightroom, Lightroom and Lightroom Classic. And both have the ability to sync to the cloud, but both don't sync to the cloud in the same ways. So this is the once in a lifetime, once and for all, this is going to be it. I hope to cover it all now, and I can always point people back to this video when they ask this question going forward. There is an ulterior motive. That I can just say, here you go, look at it, I've covered it all here. Here are all the different ways of syncing and the way it works and so forth and so on. So I see a bunch of people in the chat. I see, let's see, I see Steve. I see Bakluk. Hopefully I'm saying that correct. Zeka. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Sohag, who I chatted to earlier. Tanya, James, and General Kenobi, and Ferry, and I think I said Sean already, and Macchio. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. So again, if you are watching on the Behance chat, I saw your names. I just shouted out many of you. I probably didn't see everybody that scrolled by. But if you're watching somewhere else, that's cool. You can watch anywhere you're watching. You can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on Facebook. You can watch it on Twitter. But if you want me to see your question, if you want me to see you in the chat, I can only pay attention to one chat at a time, unfortunately. And so we dedicate that to the Behance chat. So just head over to b.net/Adobe Live. You can log in with your Adobe ID. If you don't have one, you can create one for free. You can also log in with your social media account. So you can do it either way. And once you're logged in and you head over to b.net/Adobe Live, you should see me there. And then you can participate in the chat and I will be able to see your questions. So I know that there are people watching. I see someone over there, Mav, over on YouTube. Glad to see you too. I see some people over here on my YouTube. Sherry and Clifton, and welcome everyone. But again, I can't keep doing it. I can't keep looking around all the different monitors to see all the different chats. So hang out wherever you want. But if you want to participate in the chat, head over to b.net/Adobe Live. All right. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive right into today's topic. I have less than 50 minutes or so left, and I see you, Prajes from Dubai. Welcome. And Jim, thanks for being here as well. So with that, let me pop over to my desktop where I've got Lightroom Classic running. All right, so Lightroom Classic is running on my desktop. And it's just showing my all photos view. So if I were to grab the right mouse, there we go. Come back over here, scroll all the way up. So I have roughly 250,000 photos. Yeah, 251,320 photos in my Lightroom catalog. So that's everything. But below that, you notice there's another category called all synchronized photos or all synced photos. And that's only 56,000 of the 250,000 because I don't need to sync every photo I've ever shot to the cloud. So right off the bat, that's one of the big differences in Lightroom Classic syncing to the cloud, is that it doesn't have to be all of them. It can be as few or as many as you want. We're going to go through an entire exercise where I'm just going to grab my camera. I've got my camera here. I'm going to take a picture or two. We're going to bring those in so that you see the whole process. And I'm going to show you how you can get those images into the cloud and how it differs from Lightroom Classic versus Lightroom. And we'll also even talk about, I got my phone. Let me grab the cable while I'm thinking about it. We'll even take a new picture from mobile and go through that process as well. So I'm going to plug my phone in and get that all ready to go. Yep. All right. And let's fire up. Hang on. Let me launch one thing here. I forgot to launch. Let's launch good old QuickTime. There it is over there. And let's do a new. And let's tell it to use the phone. Just getting this ready because I know I'm going to want to do it in a minute. All right, let's grab, yep, there's my phone. All right, sweet, that's working. Okay, now, first and foremost, let's talk about the process when you bring in an image, how you sync it using Lightroom Classic. So again, like I said, I've got my regular camera right here. Oh, this thing's getting heavy because I keep adding stuff to it. But this is my mirrorless camera. It's a Nikon Z6 II. I'm not even going to bother shooting tethered. I've got a memory card in here. I'm just going to take one shot. I formatted the card. There's nothing else on it. And then we'll just see that process. So I'm just going to actually take a picture of my my Stream Deck, which is my my switcher for the stream. So I'm just going to take one shot. Oh, that's probably going to be blurry. Hang on, let me delete that one. Change one setting. There we go. All right, take that one shot. There we go. And now that one shot's on the card. So turn the camera off, pop the card out. There's the card. Put the camera down for a minute. And put the card in the memory card reader that I have over here. It's a slight reach. And now it's in. So as soon as that card gets read, yep, Lightroom Classic immediately says, oh, you popped in a memory card. I'm going to go ahead and propose that you want to import the images from that card. And again, I only took one. Now, I only took one for the sake of time. Whether this was 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, the process is the same. I just took one for the sake of time on a stream. But it doesn't matter how many images you're doing this with, the process would be the same. All right, so what's it going to do? It's going to take from that memory card this one photo. I'm going to copy it, or here's copy, or copy it as DNG. I prefer copy as DNG because that way, after it copies it from the card, it will automatically convert the raw files from the proprietary raw format that the camera uses into a universal format called DNG, or digital negative. So that's just personal choice. You can just do copy, or if you did JPEG, it would just be copy anyway. All right, next up, it's going to put them in my pictures folder, and I'm going to actually just put them in a subfolder called Photography Masterclass. All right, so that's where it's going to put the photo, in my pictures folder on my hard drive in a subfolder called Photography Masterclass. But more importantly, I'm going to go up here to this section on the right where I get to also add it to a collection. So that's just, again, it's a choice. I'm going to do that now so that I don't have to do it later. So I'm going to tell it to add it to a collection. It's going to bring up all my collections and say, well, which one? And I'm going to go up here and say, I don't have one that I want to put it in yet. I do, but I'm going to make a new one. So there's a plus sign right next to the add to collection, and I'm going to tell it to create a new collection right here on the spot. So create a new collection. This new collection is going to be called Lightroom versus LRC Syncing. All right, that's where I'm going to put it. I'm going to put that in a collection set for the Photography Masterclasses. There it is. And notice I get a choice even when I'm creating a collection to sync with Lightroom. I would normally leave that on. Yes, that's exactly what I want to do, but I'm going to turn it off for now so I can walk you through the process if you're not doing it this way. Maybe you already have collections. Maybe you already have images you want to sync that are already in Lightroom. You're not doing it this way. So normally, yes, I would leave that on, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it off for now. All right, so that's been turned off. It's going to basically import the photo, create the new collection, put it in that collection, convert it to a DNG, and it's going to build a smart preview because that's the other checkbox that I have enabled. So it's going to do all those processes. Let's go ahead and create the collection now. It's going to do all those processes the minute I click this import button in the bottom right-hand corner. So let's go ahead and do it. Import. One photo, it takes me to the current import where it's that one photo. That one photo is now being converted to a DNG from NEF. So it did that. And it built the smart preview. So it did all of those things in that one operation. It was only one photo, so it all happened quickly. But if I had 50 photos, 500 photos, how many ever were on that card, it just would have done it to all of them. Okay, next, let's go down to that new collection that it just made for me. Remember, I told it to create a new collection called Lightroom versus LRC syncing, and there's the one photo that's in it. I can go ahead and click on that collection. It will take me to it, and there's the one photo. And if I want to look at that one photo that I just took, there it is. And that's my stream deck, which I reviewed or talked about in my streaming setup over at terrywhite.com. So if you want to learn more about my streaming setup, the latest post I have on my blog at terrywhite.com has all this information. But anyway, that's not what we're here for. We're here for the photo. Okay, so now that photo, let's back up a minute. Let's talk about what we did. Took one new photo, brought it into Lightroom Classic, imported it to the hard drive. That's where it is. Lightroom Classic sees it on the hard drive, shows it in Lightroom Classic, and shows it in a collection that we just made. Is it in the cloud? Not at all. Nope, it's not in the cloud. So if I delete this photo, it's deleted. If I never use this photo, it's just sitting there on the hard drive, never being used. If I don't back up this photo and something happens to my hard drive, it's gone. So it's just like the cloud doesn't exist at this point in terms of Lightroom Classic. Jimmy's asking on Facebook, because I just happened to see Jimmy's comment, so I normally don't look at that chat. But he's asking a good question. Is there a way to sync photos without syncing all the ones on your phone? Yes, there is. But we'll get there. We're not there yet. All right, so anyway, let's finish this. So right now, nothing to do with the cloud because I turned off that checkbox. It did not sync this collection to the cloud. It's just sitting here on the hard drive. Now let's say I want this image in the cloud. Now let's talk about what that means. Lightroom has had a Lightroom cloud for years and years and years that Lightroom Classic, even before it was called Lightroom Classic, could take advantage of. But the difference is in Lightroom Classic, even if I choose to sync this to the cloud, it's not syncing the full resolution of the image. It's syncing what's called a smart preview. So for example, if we go look at the dimensions of this photo, there we go. It's a 24 megapixel photo, so it's 6048 by 4024. But a smart preview is only 2540 on the longest edge, 25 something, 2540 I believe is what it is, but it could be 2560, it could be 2500 pixels on the longest edge. So that means it's smaller than this. But that's okay, because you still have the full resolution of Lightroom Classic for printing and higher resolution output or whatever you're going to do. It's just syncing a smaller version of it to the cloud from Lightroom Classic. So that's first and foremost if you do choose to sync. Secondly, in order to sync, you need to go up to the upper right-hand corner on the cloud icon and click and turn it on, because syncing is not even turned on in Lightroom Classic by default unless you go here. Mine says pause syncing because it is on, but yours will have a little play button if you've never turned it on and you need to hit the play button. And even if you go hit that play button right now for the first time, nothing will sync because there's still one more step. Remember, 250,000 photos, 251,000, but only 56,000 or so are synced. Why the difference? Because I get to pick and choose by collection which ones are getting synced. So for example, you can only sync one. Yeah, Sean, we'll get to that in a second, but yes, you are correct. If I were to go now and say, yes, I do want this collection to be synced to the cloud. And by the way, you'll notice if I go to Lightroom, which is the other version, the version in the cloud, these are my all photos view, and that photo is not here yet because it's never been synced. So let me sync while I'm talking. So let me go ahead and do that. So I've turned on syncing, it's on. Nothing will get synced until I tell it what to sync. How do I tell it what to sync? That happens on each individual collection. So over here on the left-hand side, you'll notice that there is a little box to the left of each one. Some of those little boxes are there. Some of them are a little sync icon with the two arrows going back and forth. The ones with the sync icon means that they're already turned on. Those are the ones that are syncing. So if I go here and just check this box, click, now that is syncing. And I can see, number one, I can see that the cloud icon is now spinning, letting me know that, hey, that photo's syncing now. And there's a little sync icon now that just activated, those little three dots, just activated on the photo itself. So I'm gonna keep talking while that's happening, but it's now taking a smart preview, not the full resolution, 2540 pixels and on the longest edge, and syncing that up. Okay. What will that let me do once that's synced up? Let's talk about that. Why would you even do this in the first place? Number one, by turning on that collection and telling it to sync, anything I put in this collection going forward will get synced up to the cloud. So that means it will be on my phone when I go to Lightroom on my phone. It'll be on my iPad. If I pop over to my iPad, I just noticed it happen over there. There it is on my iPad, right there. That photo of the Stream Deck we just took. There it is. It's on my iPad now because I synced it to the cloud. If I go back to the desktop and I now go over to Lightroom, the other version, there it is because it's been synced to the cloud. And so the number one reason you would want to do this is so you can access that photo on other devices, mainly mobile. We used to even refer to this as Lightroom Mobile because that's why you would do it. You would sync to mobile so that you would always have the ability to access those photos on your mobile devices. Now, you're not just accessing the photos. You actually can work with them. You can do anything you want with them. You can crop them. You can develop them. You can use any of the editing power on Lightroom on your mobile devices. So, for example, if I go back to the iPad now, there's the iPad, and I tap on that photo, and I were to crop it. Let's go ahead and crop it. Bring it up a little bit, and crop in the sides. There we go. And now let's go back to develop. Oh, yes, I'm done. Let's go back to develop. And in develop, I'm going to go in and say for my profiles, I want a black and white profile, and I'm going to make it a black and white. Okay. So now what I just did was I just told Lightroom to add some non-destructive edits to that photo. Change the crop, which is non-destructive because you can always go back and uncrop. You're never deleting the pixels. And add a profile. Make it look black and white, but I'm never throwing away the color. The color's still there. Now, the difference is once I do those changes, all Lightroom has to sync is the metadata. So it no longer has to sync the full resolution of the image anymore because the full resolution of the image, or in this case, the smart preview, is already in the cloud. So it syncs a very small, like 1K worth of information back up when you make changes. So if I were to now go to my desktop, Lightroom Classic, oh my God, there it is. It's a black and white and cropped. Hang on, wrong image, or wrong button. So there it is, full screen, cropped, black and white, just like I did on the iPad. And even though the iPad only had access to a smart preview, I'm back in Lightroom Classic on my desktop. I've got access to the full resolution. I'm still using the full resolution, the original 6048 by 4024, but it's been cropped down to this. And that's fine, but I still have all this resolution left. So even though smart previews are the only thing that gets synced to the cloud for size, and back in the day when this was created, you didn't have the bandwidth to sync all that data, it's still extremely usable on mobile and everywhere else. And when I come back to my desktop, those changes have been applied to the full resolution image. So it was, and again, thinking back to when this was the only version of Lightroom, it was awesome. We had our images in the cloud. We could access them whenever we wanted on any device, phone, iPad, tablet, and make any changes we wanted to make. And life was good. However, Lightroom Classic has been around for 15 years, I want to say. Over 10, yeah, 14, 15 years. And while professional photographers certainly can grasp and get an understanding of how the interface works and how it works to manage all your photos and so forth and so on, new users or hobbyists or mobile-only users, this interface is a lot to deal with. So the team created a new version of Lightroom about 4 or 5 years ago called Lightroom. It used to be Lightroom CC. And of course you're saying, well, wasn't this called Lightroom? Yes, it was. And I don't want to go through the whole naming debacle, but Lightroom is the new one now. And this one is now referred to as Lightroom Classic. Same features, still gets new updates, still gets new features, still gets development, but the new one is the new one. So if I pop over to the new one, there's that photo. And look, at the very bottom of the window here on the left-hand side, there is that collection I made, Lightroom versus Lightroom Classic syncing. Now in Lightroom, the terminology is different in a lot of cases. So we don't call it collections here, we call it albums. Because albums, if you were going to make a new product from scratch, albums makes more sense for photos than collections because we're used to photo albums. So a lot of the terminology is kind of like the Lightroom team rethinking how things are named based on what you would name things from today. Okay. All right. Now, notice it just stuck that new album on the end of the list. And on Classic, I had it organized in a collection set. Well, there's no such thing as collection sets. That's why I stuck it on the end of the list. In Lightroom, these are actually called folders. And that's a whole different thing in Lightroom Classic. They're totally different meanings. So I'm going to go to the folder for demo. There's my Photography Masterclass folder. I'm now going to drag, go all the way down to the bottom, drag this album up to the top here and put it in the Photography Masterclass. Oop, not that one. No. Photography Masterclass folder. All right, so in the Photography Masterclass folder, there it is, Lightroom versus Lightroom Classic syncing. Boom, done. So far, we've learned how syncing works in Lightroom Classic. That's it. You start on Lightroom Classic with whatever the original is, RAW, DNG, JPEG, whatever. If you want to sync them to the cloud, you have to put them in a collection. You can't sync a folder. It only works with collections. You create a collection, you name the collection whatever you want, you drag over whatever photos you want to be in it, and then those photos are converted to smart previews in the background and synced up to the cloud. And then you can access them on your mobile devices. So if I go over to my iPad now, because I did the change on Lightroom on the desktop, if I go to Demo, if I go to Photography Masterclass, there's Lightroom versus Lightroom Classic syncing, and it happens on my iPad. If I were to go to my phone, which has been sitting here, not even running Lightroom this entire time, let me show you this. If I were to go to my phone, there it is on my phone, and if I were to go back to all my albums, go to Demo, go to Photography Masterclass, and go up. There it is, Lightroom versus Lightroom Classic on my phone. Same photo, same adjustments been made to it. And by the way, if I want to change my mind and go to a different profile, I can. So if I wanted to go from artistic to Adobe Raw, let's go back to, let's make it vivid. That'll put the color back in. I click that. So now I'm on my phone. I tap that, and I'm making the same kinds of changes. I can uncrop it if I want to. I can do anything I want if at this point. So if I want to even go to crop and choose to crop it back down from, unlock it first, and then crop it back down from the bottom. There we go. I've uncropped it. So I'm doing all the same operations no matter where I am in Lightroom. Once I get out of editing, it will then sync those metadata changes back up to the cloud. And I see the little cloud icon with the 3 little dots going back and forth. It's already done it because, again, it only has to sync the metadata. And so it'll take a second or two for Lightroom Classic to go touch base with the cloud and then bring down those changes, and boom, you just saw it happen. Oh, no, you didn't just see it happen. You didn't see any of that because you were not looking at my desktop. There we go. So let me go back to what I was talking about. Sorry. Yep, you're only seeing the iPad. I see that comment now. Here's my phone. So there's the Lightroom Classic. I went into the phone and I basically turned on the profile for color and uncropped it. And then that change happened on the desktop as well. So let's, just for the sake of transparency, let's go make another change so you see what I did. So I'll crop it back up even tighter this time. I'll crop off the laptop. There we go. And I'll make it brighter. Let's go into exposure and let's brighten exposure up. All right, so now I've done 2 changes. So again, I get out of it. As long as you're editing, it won't sync. So once you're done and you back out of the editing, it will sync the metadata changes. And then those metadata changes will make their way up to the cloud, usually in a couple seconds because it's just metadata. And then at this point, Lightroom Classic checks in on the cloud every few seconds, so it doesn't happen instantly. But once it checks in on the cloud and sees those metadata changes, it will then apply them to the photo that's already already in Lightroom Classic on your catalog, which it just did. Now you just saw it happen that time. Okay, so if I go back, there are all my albums and all my images on the phone, just like they were on iPad. Here's the one we've been working with. And now let's switch gears and talk about what's the syncing like for Lightroom. So we just kind of saw it in Lightroom Classic. What's the difference? Number one, Lightroom Classic only can sync, period, no matter what. There's no trick, no workaround, no nothing. You can't pay more, it doesn't matter. There's no trick to sync more than a smart preview. That's all it does, smart previews. So people are like, well, let's think about that for a minute. Let's say I synced 50,000 smart previews, which I've done, and something happens to my hard drive. Can I then create a new computer, new hard drive, reload everything? I don't have a backup. Will those images still be in the cloud? Yes. But they'll only be smart previews in the cloud. They won't be the full 6,000, whatever it is, 48 by 4,024. It'll be a smaller file. So you wouldn't necessarily lose everything, but you'd certainly be working with a much smaller file than you started with. And so that could be devastating for people. So the team created a brand new version of Lightroom with a more streamlined interface. And this more streamlined interface has one advantage that Lightroom Classic does not. When you import an image into this version, it does sync the full resolution up to the cloud. Full resolution, not a smart preview, as big as a file as it is, in whatever format it's in, RAW, proprietary RAW, DNG, TIFF, JPEG, whatever it is, gets synced up to the cloud. So we're going to do just that. I'm going to take the memory card out of my reader. Here it is. I'm going to put it back in the camera. All right, let's put it back in the camera. Close the door, turn the camera back on. We're going to take a different picture this time. Let's take a picture of my display here. All right. I'll back out a little bit to get the my loop deck as well. And we even get a little bit on the microphone. We get it all. Okay, so now I've taken that shot. Turn the camera off, pop the card out, put the camera down, take the card, put it in the memory card reader. All right, pushed it in. And one thing that you noticed in Lightroom Classic is the minute you put a card in, if we go back to even Lightroom Classic, it says, oh, you want to bring some stuff in again? I'll bring up the, and there's the new photo. I'm going to say cancel. I'm going to go back to Lightroom. Lightroom does not automatically bring up that window. It does not bring up any window at all automatically. So I would have to go in and say that I want to add photos at the very top here. When I click add photos, it will show me a list of all the devices plugged in, my phone's plugged in, and my card reader's plugged in. So if I then say, yes, use the card reader, it will show me the two photos. And notice Classic only showed me the new photo because it had already brought in the other one. Lightroom doesn't really understand that the other one has been brought in because it was synced from Classic as a smart preview. So it's saying, well, I can bring them both in full resolution if you want. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's just get back to just the one we want. We want the new one. Now, the same thing. It's going to bring in that new photo, just the ones we check. We can even tell it what collection to put it in, or album. So it said, oh, you were already on an album. Do you want to put it in that one? Or you could pick a different one, or from the pop-up menu. Or you can create one. You can do go new, same thing. And that's it. You can add the photo. There is no create smart previews, rename the photos, convert to DNG, none of that stuff. This is a very simple, streamlined interface for the average person that doesn't need to do all that stuff. Where does it locate in the phone for the smart preview? Smart previews it's not a feature of the phone per se. So like you don't go to the phone and create smart previews. Smart previews are only created in Classic. So they're just automatically, like that image we showed on the phone was automatically there from Classic as a smart preview. But you can't make smart previews on the phone if that's what you mean. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click Add Photo. And it takes a second to read it from the card, and there it is. So now you notice that there's a little sync icon on the bottom of the photo. Again, it's a RAW file, NEF from Nikon. And it's now syncing that photo. So now the difference is, in this case, it's actually syncing the full resolution, the full 6048 by 4000, whatever it was. And it's syncing it as a RAW file. It's not doing any kind of conversion. It's not converting to smart preview. It's not doing anything. It's just syncing the whole photo. And that will take as long as it takes on your internet connection, which is why we only took one photo, because we don't need to sit here waiting for 20 photos to sync up. So it shouldn't take too much longer. My internet connection is pretty fast. But once that photo has been synced up, then that photo, which it just finished, that full resolution, if we go click on it and we go to Info, it will say what it did. So it's synced and backed up the original NEF file locally on the drive right now so far, and cloud has the original NEF file. So that means that if this hard drive crashed and I had to get a whole new hard drive or a whole new computer or whatever the circumstance was, and I downloaded Lightroom and I signed back into my ID, I have all my photos that were ever synced this way. I have the full resolution. I have everything that I need. I don't have the ability, I don't have to worry about, oh, it's only a smart preview, it's smaller. Nope. I would have all of these photos. So technically, Adobe is serving as a backup for your photos at that point if you use this version of Lightroom. Now, if I go to my iPad, is it there? Of course it is, because the iPad version and this version are very similar. It syncs the full resolution. So if I go work on that photo on the iPad, am I working in the full resolution? Absolutely. You're working in the, I don't know if I can see it here. Yeah, you can see it in the bottom right-hand, or the bottom right-hand corner there, the full 6048 by 4024 full NEF raw file here on, and here I can even show the difference. If I tap, if I do a 2-finger tap, I can switch between the modes. There it is. So it's showing me in the upper right-hand corner that that's a raw file versus the one on the left is a DNG. So it's showing me what they actually are, and it's giving me the exact image on my desktop. I'm sorry, on my iPad for my desktop. So if I go back to my desktop and I bring back up my phone, there it is on my phone. Same thing. And if I tap on the raw file, there it is. It's letting me know. Now, I do have a feature. Notice it says Smart Preview. I do have a feature on my phone. Since I don't want to tie up a bunch of space on my phone, there's a preference you can use in your Lightroom preferences on your phone that says only bring down the Smart Preview from the cloud. That's all I need on my phone. So that's why that one says Smart Preview, even though the original raw file is in the cloud for me to get if I ever need it. So that's just an option. You can not have that option. You can have the full resolution. You can have the raw files on your phone as well. Okay, so now that I've got the phone here, let's talk about what are my choices with the phone. So let me answer some of these questions first. Let's go to Sergio. Sergio says, can I import photos to a brand new collection without pointing to a folder on the PC? In that case, where's, no. Because whether you put them in a collection or not, they have to be in a folder. Because in Lightroom Classic sees your images in folders. So going straight to a collection doesn't mean you're still bypassing a folder. They have to be in a folder. That's where they're physically located. So think of the collection as virtual, meaning that you can have 50 collections just like you can have 50 playlists in your music program like iTunes. But the songs are still in one place on your device. The images are still in folders on your device, whether you use collections or not. So no, you cannot bypass having a folder on your PC. How to make smart previews in Lightroom Classic so I can see it on mobile. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it manually. All you have to do is put them in a collection and sync the collection. It will make the smart previews for you. You don't have to do that. It will do it for you. I didn't do it. Well, actually, I did do it on import. But even if you don't do it on import, or let's say the images are already there, the minute you put them in a collection and sync that collection, Lightroom will build the smart previews for you in the background. What about storage and storage space? Okay, what about it? In your hard drive, you have as much storage space as you purchase on your hard drive. So that's that. Lightroom Classic is using storage on your hard drives. But as far as cloud is concerned, and this is a very important point, Lightroom Classic can sync an unlimited number number of smart previews to the cloud. It does not tie up your cloud storage. So if I synced 1,000,000 photos raw, which would only sync smart previews, to the cloud, I could sync 1,000,000 photos to the cloud if I want. And it does not tie up any space. Thanks for reminding me. That is a big distinction. This version of Lightroom, since it's syncing originals, does use cloud space. And it uses whatever you bought. So if you bought 1 terabyte, it's using 1 terabyte. If you bought 5 terabytes, it's using 5 terabytes. You have to purchase the space in the cloud from Adobe for how much you want to use. So that's storage. Storage is either on your hard drive for Lightroom Classic. Smart previews don't take up any storage in the cloud. Lightroom does require, because you're not storing the photos on your hard drive, you're storing them in the cloud, so therefore you purchase the storage there. All right, if Lightroom Classic gets stuck syncing one photo, what's the best way of identifying that item and stop it from syncing? I've been here before. I've been here sometimes for months before where it gets stuck syncing a photo, but the new ones go right past it and sync, so I didn't worry about it. But let's go back to Lightroom Classic so I can show you this. So in Lightroom Classic, if you ever don't see like a green check mark, so the green check mark is finished, telling me it's finished. It'll either be green, meaning it's finished, or it'll be the blue circle, meaning it's still syncing. And if it's still syncing and you hover over it, it will tell you how many photos are syncing. So usually when it's stuck, that number will always be the same. 2, 3, 5, 11. How many of our photos are stuck? Now, there is a couple of ways to identify it. If Lightroom is having a problem syncing, it will put those photos in a collection, which mine is gone already because I fixed the problems. But it'll make a new collection here at the top of the list saying sync error or something to that effect, like it's having a problem syncing. There's a sync error that you and it will list the photos and show them to you as to which ones are stuck. If that's not working, the other thing you can try is you can click the cloud and you can go to the little gear icon here in the bottom right-hand corner. And when you click the gear icon, that will show you any images that are having issues down here. So it will show you which ones are syncing, and if there are problems with them, it will usually identify that there's an error. And then you can actually click on the photo because it'll link to it in your catalog and go fix the photo, remove it, whatever you need to do. So there's a couple ways to find sync issues, or fix sync issues if you have them in Classic. All right, back to Lightroom Cloud. So, or Lightroom. Back to Lightroom. So in Lightroom, it's syncing the full resolution. The full resolution goes up to the cloud. You can choose to have the full resolution come down to your devices or just smart previews of those full resolutions, up to you. And same thing, if I make changes on any device, it makes those changes across the board because it's syncing the metadata back up. What else did I want to, oh, back to the phone. That's what we're going to do. So go back to the phone for a minute. Now, let me get out of Lightroom. And let's say that I take a new picture with my phone camera. So I go to my camera, and I'm just thinking what I want to shoot this time. Oh, I will shoot the light box over here. So I go to my camera, I bring up the light box, and there's an apple sitting there, and I just go ahead and snap a photo of it. Now, that photo got snapped in Apple's default high efficiency format. Notice that Apple's newest iPhones, the 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max, there's a choice to shoot RAW. So if I turn on RAW, I can actually shoot that image as a RAW file. Get closer on it, or get it from the top. Okay, so now those two photos are on my camera roll, right? Here's one, and there's the other one on my camera roll. And if I were to now get out of this and get out of the camera, I can go to the Photos app on the phone and see them, but we already know they're on the camera roll. But I've got Lightroom set to automatically import new photos, meaning ones I took with the regular camera. So if I go here and I go to my All Photos, there they are. There's the two images at the very top. So there's the DNG, the RAW file I just shot, and the other one doesn't say DNG because it's not a RAW file. So those two images are syncing to the cloud. I can even see the three little dots, animations on the cloud at the top there. They're all syncing full resolution because this is Lightroom. This is not Lightroom Classic. So that 12 megapixel RAW file is being synced, and that 12 megapixel high efficiency like JPEG size file is being synced as well. Now, while we're at it, I'm going to select those two images, and I'm going to add them to a collection, or an album in this case. Demo, Photography Masterclass, add them to my Lightroom, Lightroom versus Lightroom Classic syncing. Add them, done. So now they'll be there as well. So if I go back, I go to demo, I go to Photography Masterclass, and I go to that album, there they are. So not only will it sync them whenever it finishes syncing, but they should appear, oh, did I go back by mistake? No. They should appear on my desktop once that syncing happens in both directions. So syncing the full resolution up to the cloud, and then here they come down now on the desktop into Lightroom. Now, because that collection or album, in this case, album, is synced to the cloud as well, if I go to Lightroom Classic, it's starting to bring them down there as well, because that album / collection is synced to the cloud. It'll take us a few seconds to bring down the bigger raw file, but it'll come down eventually. So, and there it is. Now it begs the question. Lightroom puts everything in the cloud. Full resolution. So if I go click on this one, it's telling me that it's a, locally it brought down a smart preview, but in the cloud is the original DNG. Okay, great. If I look at it on my phone, I know that it's the same thing. It's the full DNG, full raw file. But if I go to Classic, remember Classic can only sync up smart previews. So what did it bring down from the phone? It brought down to full resolution. Because at the end of the day, we always wanted your Lightroom Classic to be whole. In other words, to have the full resolution of the file. So it's only 12 megapixels, so it's about half the size. So that's the full resolution Apple RAW file that got brought down into Classic. Now that begs the next question. Where did it put it? Oh, wait, no, you can see. We can see where you live. Yeah, not good on streams. Well, figure it out. Yep, you can see it. You saw a couple streets. And I guess if you did your research, you could find out where those streets are. But anyway, it brought down the full resolution, but where did it put them? So it put them in the folder that you chose in your preferences, if you chose one. And I highly recommend you go choose one. So in Lightroom Classic, we go to Preferences. And under your Lightroom Sync Preferences, there is an option to specify location for Lightroom's synced images. And yes, Sean, I appreciate the help. Lightroom, specify location for Lightroom's synced images. And I've got mine specified here. In other words, I chose a folder back, a couple years ago when this feature came out of where I would want those images to be placed, whatever drive I want them, whatever folder I want them, when they come down from the cloud. Because if I take a lot of images with my phone and I bring them into Lightroom on my phone and they sync up to the cloud and then they come down into Classic the next time I open Classic, I want to know where they are. I want to know where it puts them. So I've got a folder on my hard drive. There it is. From Lightroom Ecosystem, because that's what I called it back then. So 896 photos are in that folder right now that came down from the cloud in whatever format they were in. So either as RAW or as HEICs or JPEGs, whatever the phone shot or device shot, I should say in this case. So that's the full round trip. In other words, remember we started with this one in Classic. We put it in a collection, told that collection to sync. It went up to the cloud as a smart preview and appeared on all my devices as a smart preview. Then we shot a photo, a another one, and we brought that one directly into Lightroom, full resolution raw file, JPEG, whatever it was. And that one went up to the cloud, but that one got backed up as a full resolution original. And of course, because syncing is turned on, it appears on all my devices. So there it is on all my devices. So I have the ability to work with any of these and do anything to them. And no matter where I do those changes, they will happen across the board. So if I go back to Lightroom Classic and I say, well, the white balance on this photo is definitely off, and I go into my develop module, and again, this one came down from the cloud in its full resolution, and I go to basic, and I choose the white balance tool, and I go ahead and click, and I adjust the white balance and maybe cool it off even a little bit more. There's my white balance, and again, if I crop it, oh, hang on, I didn't mean to hit C, I meant to hit R. There we go. Nope, wrong one, wrong image. This image. There we go. I crop it down and over and up, and I get my new crop. Great. Non-destructive crop, non-destructive adjustments, and I can even run an auto on this, an auto tone. There we go. And let it brighten it up a little bit, do everything I want to do to it. Great, looks great. Now, when I come back to this one, since this one was shot in RAW, it automatically detected that it was an Apple Pro RAW and applied the Apple Pro RAW profile to it. So same thing, I can hit auto, make any adjustments I want, crop, adjust, take it over to Photoshop, do more with it, do anything I want because I have the original here in Lightroom Classic. All right, so now that those changes, I don't like the white balance anymore. Hang on, let's warmed it up a little too much, or cooled it off a little too much. Let's warm it up a little bit more. There we go. All right, so now that I've got this done, and again, Lightroom is saying, oh, you made some changes. I'm going to sync those changes up to the cloud so that they're represented across all your devices. All right, we're just about at the end of this. Let me just make sure that I answer all the questions. All right, if you took the photo on your phone, how did it get into the collection you created? So Tanya says, if you took the photo with your phone, how did it get into the collection you just created? So let's do it again. Let's go back to the phone. Remember when I was in the camera, and I'll take a picture of the chat. Let's do that. We'll take a picture of the chat so Tanya sees herself. All right, and then because I took that picture of the chat and it's on my camera roll, I went into Lightroom, and Lightroom, I've got Lightroom's preference set on my phone to import all new photos. So there's the new photo. You're right. Right now, it's not in the album. What you missed was I then selected the photo, select that photo, and I said add to at the very bottom. And I chose to put it in that album. You might have missed that part. So I said, add it to this album, done. So now if I go to that album, demo, Photography Masterclass, it should be there, and there it is. So now when that one finishes syncing up, it'll be on all the devices. So that's how it got into that album from the phone. All right. And you can create an album on the fly. So Ferry's saying you put in an album that's synced with Lightroom Classic earlier. You don't, yeah. Even if you didn't have one yet, you can make a new album and put it in there, and it will get synced. When you sync to Lightroom Classic, does it free up the space in the cloud? So Paul's asking, when you sync to Lightroom Classic, does it free up the space in the cloud? No, it doesn't, because the image is still in the cloud. Those apples are still in the cloud. The stuff's still in the cloud, even though it came down to Lightroom Classic. So it doesn't free up anything unless you delete it from the cloud. 84 unsynced images that need to go away. How do I take the listed images and stop the sync? So William's saying I have 84 unsynced images that just need to go away. Well, I don't know what the just needs to go away mean, meaning if you want to delete them, you can delete them. You can also uncheck the box for a collection in Classic so it doesn't sync them anymore. You can go into the Lightroom in the cloud and delete them. Yeah, so it depends on what you mean by you need them gone. So remove them from Lightroom, delete them, take them out of a sync collection. Lots of ways to get rid of them. Okay, we are out of time, but hopefully I got all the questions. I think I saw all the questions here. And I just want to thank everyone for joining me on this adventure. Real quick, 1 second, just go back just for a second, and just to show you that chat window did come down from the cloud that I shot on the phone, synced up to Lightroom, came down in its full resolution of whatever I shot on the phone. So syncing goes both ways. Classic, smart previews, Lightroom, full resolution. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for watching me, and we'll see you on next week's masterclass. And stay tuned for the Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge. Bye, everybody.